Good afternoon. Good afternoon in the polar vortex. I'm Anthony Rapp. This is Jeffrey Sullivan.
Hello, friends. Nice to see you all today.
And I was asked very graciously by Jeffrey to moderate this conversation we're going to have. It's in honor of Jeffrey, whom I've known for 30 years because he was one of the original Rent producers. That's when we first met. But it's also in honor of his memoir that was released May of last year.
Yeah, May. Yeah.
So we have Rent in common. We also have being a memoirist in common, which I don't know. That was in my bingo card. When we met 30 years ago. I mean, I'd written stuff as a kid, but we were talking a little bit about this backstage. I know that you said you wrote some, but did you ever envision yourself writing a book and publishing a book and going through that whole process of putting thoughts of life to page and then sending it to the world?
The most interesting character in this book is not me. It's my father. And I think I always had an appointment to write about my loving, reckless, bewildering, tempestuous, generous father. And I think that was the seed. How do I make sense of this man who gave me so much and who I was so frequently ashamed of?
And the period of time when, I don't know the exact dates of when he passed, relative to your working on this book, or, you know?
Yeah, not related. My dad died. You know, it's so funny, us in the theater, we put everything with shows.
Yeah.
So my dad died 6 months before The Last Ship opened on Broadway, and while I was working on Hamilton. And so it had no relationship to it, but what is interesting about memoir, and of course, Anthony, you have so much about your profound relationship with your mother. I knew that my book was going to make my mother cry a lot, and that it was going to upset her. But I also knew that she'd come out on the other side and also love it. But I also knew it would take time with me to do it with her. And so therefore, two things. One is I never told my mother I was writing a book. And I thought, because I wrote a book before I had a publisher. I only wrote it for myself. And I had no idea if anyone would ever want to publish this book. I'm not a movie star. I'm not a Broadway star. And most people don't even know what a producer is. So I wrote the book for myself. And sadly, the same exact week that Simon & Schuster said, "We want to buy your book," was the same week my mother found out she had pancreatic cancer. And as a result, and she decided so bravely she was not going to get chemotherapy. And she was going to live out the rest of her days as best as she could. And for her, it was 6 months. And as a result, I never told her that I wrote a book, and I never told her about it because we didn't have time. Yeah, we didn't have time to go through that process. And a good friend of mine said to me when I said, "What should I do?" And he said, "Your mother is so proud of everything you've ever done. If there's anything about that book that's going to make her sad, don't bother."
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess that leads me to another question about just, you talk about a lot of personal things of your life growing up. Are you still in touch with any of those people from that time of your growing up, other than your parents? The other people that you talk about in the book, were they still, any of them, part of your life?
Yeah, I talk about my best friend Bruce Rosen from grade 3 to grade 9, and I am still in touch with him, though not frequently. So yeah, there are a lot of characters in that book that are still around.
And did any of that weigh on you, or how did you navigate the idea of, okay, I'm going to write about these things that happened between us? Did you feel that you had to?
Yeah, you're leading to something big. which is, how do you write truthfully, and truthfully from my point of view? Because a memoir is a memoir. It's only my memory. It's not anyone else's. And maybe that will be true as we talk about Rent. So I wrote with the notion that I am going to write what happened, and I am going to be as truthful about my ugliness, about my selfishness, about my flaws, as I am with everybody else. And the rule of thumb with these things is you ask for their blessing, but you don't ask for their permission.
Yeah. What was described to me too was in terms of any kind of legal concerns, although maybe it's a different landscape now because it is 20 years later, and maybe the nature of how people think about public-facing people and platforms and lawsuits and all that stuff might be different now. But was that you could say anything? I could say anything about anyone if I talked about their medical life or their sexual life. I had to get their permission or change their name.
Wow.
Or change their.
That's not what I was told. I was told as long as you are not defaming them or libeling them, you can say anything you want, and you do not have to ask permission.
Interesting, yeah. So there are some people like that I did wind up changing them because people from my teenage years that I did not even know how to find.
Yeah.
To ask permission about certain things.
Yeah.
And then there's other people that I did I wanted them to know. It's like
yeah.
It was a very interesting thing. There were ways in which, and I wonder about this for you. There were a couple moments that felt to me very innocuous in my book that upset my sister. I never would have predicted that is anything like that, where you never would have thought, oh, that'll be the thing that'll get up someone's craw.
You know what? There were a couple people I needed to call just because they're acquaintances to say, you're in this book for a reason, you have no idea. And then when I said, they're like, oh, absolutely, go for it. And with one of them, it happened to be a person who's HIV positive and had been for 30 years, but I was actually revealing it in this book. And he said, it's all true, go for it.
Wow. You mean revealing it in a public-facing way?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. So, when you were approaching it, obviously you went through you wanted to tell a personal story, and then you also wanted to tell the story of the professional, which is also of course personal.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it makes sense. Like did you think of it as sort of like two threads or two pieces of a whole, or how did you approach it any differently, or did you try to find a way to thread that together?
This was my goal. I'm a poor kid from Detroit. I'm an adopted kid. I was a burgeoning gay kid, a kid with a lot of shame. And I wanted to ask the question and find the answer. How did this kid who lived in a neighborhood that the kids derisively called Cardboard Village, because our houses were made of tar shingles instead of bricks, because we didn't have a basement to hide in during tornado watches and tornado warnings. You'd have to hide in a closet. How did I get from the backyard of Cardboard Village, listening to my cassette of Sunday in the Park with George in college, thinking, I love Broadway so much. I love the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Jerome Robbins, the Stephen Sondheim, and the Hal Prince. How am I ever going to get from Cardboard Village to Broadway? And that's what made me want to write the book, to chart it. And I wanted to do it both for my own catharsis, but equally important for anyone else who has felt that kind of shame and that kind of feeling of being an outsider.
And I know that you talk about it a little bit in When You Saw Boho Days, which was the original version of Tick Tick Boom.
Yeah.
That's your first encounter with Jonathan Larson. That there was something about how he talked about his personal journey and his desire to make a difference and his struggle to to make his way and to find the path, but to stay true to himself, and you felt like that spoke to you very personally, even though at that time you weren't necessarily trying to be an actor anymore. You weren't trying to be a performer, correct?
I wanted to be a producer
You
at
wanted to be
that
a producer.
moment.
And yet somehow that spoke to you, that thread. So
I have the chills right now, Anthony. I can feel being in that theater and watching Jonathan sing Cages or Wings, which do you prefer? Do I have it right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ask the Birds.
yeah.
Or Jonathan, singing What a Way to Spend the Day.
Yeah.
And when I went to go see that show that night, because my friend Beth Emelson invited me to see this thing called Boho Days, a rock monologue. And no one had ever taken the words rock and monologue and put them next to each other before. So already that was like, what? So, okay, this is gonna be a one-man show, but it's gonna be told through songs. I was like, that sounds cool. And I was a 25-year-old who was a booking agent who wanted to be a producer, who had just broken up from a 6-year relationship, afraid I'll never meet anyone again, because that's what we feel when we're 25 and we break up. We're like, oh, I'm gonna be alone the rest of my life. And how am I ever gonna realize my dreams? And I was like, how is this guy who's writing a show about turning 30 and feeling like his head is about to explode, tick, tick, boom. This guy who's turning 30, nobody wants to produce his rock musicals, and he has this chance to get a job as a copywriter. And maybe he can move to an apartment where the bathtub is not in the kitchen and 3 people don't have to make appointments for when they can take over the kitchen to take their bath. And you don't have to throw the keys down, literally what Anthony does in Rent, to the ground from the payphone that was literally at, was it 508 Greenwich Street?
It was at the corner. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, you'd call Jonathan and he'd throw the keys down and you'd get in the building. And as I'm watching him do this show about realizing his dreams, I was like, how is it possible that this man who I have never encountered before in my life is telling my story?
But you see, what I find interesting though is that even though, yeah, the signifying details weren't the same, and yet it still resonated so
That's
powerfully.
right, and that's what we call the brilliance of theater.
Yeah, and you do talk about in the book how that you became friendly with him from that experience, even though you wanted to produce it or find a way, but it didn't happen and couldn't, and then you realized, there were all sorts of factors, but you stayed in touch, you maintained a relationship with Jonathan, even though this didn't happen, where you didn't get to produce Boho Days.
That's true. Yeah, we could not raise the money.
And there's something about, I don't know if you, I don't think you explicitly say, you say that you maintain a friendship, you say that you continue talking to him, so that when he invited you to the reading,
Yeah.
you had stayed somewhat in close touch.
Yeah, we were absolutely in touch.
Which is interesting in and of itself, because I think in show business, that doesn't always happen.
Oh, right, that if I couldn't do it, I would have dropped him, or conversely, because I couldn't do it, he dropped me.
Right. So
Yeah.
that thread continued, and even after that initial reading, you did share with him that the show was a mess and it needed work, it wasn't ready yet, and
Yeah.
all that, and he was understandably disappointed. And yet, then when it continued to have life, you kept being drawn to giving it a chance. Why didn't you give up on it? Why didn't you say, next time, but something else?
Because I knew his music was unlike any other music we were hearing on Broadway, and his music was affecting me. It was affecting me in my guts. And I knew he's got the music. And now if he can get the story, it's gonna succeed. So I wouldn't give up, because I just thought, keep working until you get the story. And you know what's interesting? We're going to talk a little bit about In the Heights and hear 2 amazing songs. That was the same exact thing with the development of In the Heights with Lynn, which is he had the music, and then he had the characters, and the last thing that fell into place was the plot.
Yeah, and musicals are weird, folks, because because they are so much about the music, and so yeah, the music can be so thrilling, but then they are also stories. So when you're putting together a musical, it can take a long time for that to kind of finally come together, because it's not necessarily the first expression. The first expression is the music, right? The first thing that really takes off. So then to be able to thread it through is...
Well, no one knows who wrote the book To the Sound of Music, but you all, 100% of you know who wrote The Sound of Music.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure there's a few of you that know who wrote the book, and I do too, but no one knows Lindsay and Krauss in history.
Yeah, so over the course of the reading, you saw the reading, you were like, Jonathan needs work, I can't, and Jonathan was, of course, understandably disappointed, but also then he was like, no, I got this. He was always so super confident, which is mind-boggling to me too, given the fact that he had been out of school for, at this point, 12 or 13 years, and still had so little success of any real measure.
Working at the Moondance Diner.
Still believed, and would say to you and others, I'm the future of musical theater, I'm going to change the game, I'm the next Angels in America. He would say these kinds of things, and he meant it, without this outside evidence.
People looked at him like he was an alien, because he would say these at parties, and they were like, what?
Yeah. But it was also, like, it was said with confidence, but not, I don't know, for me, I never saw it as like, it was just true.
It was fact.
Fact. When he was right. But, so then, and then the workshop of the show was in '94, which was where I entered the picture and got the incredible experience of being part of it. But even I knew that it wasn't done. It was, needed things. And still then at that point, you then, however, even though it still needed work, that's when you and Kevin and Alan said, we are doing this.
Yeah, Jonathan made an enormous leap from his first ever reading in the spring of '93 to the workshop that the Richard Rodgers Foundation paid for in November of 1994, which is where, I mean, in addition to the breakthroughs he made with the music and the breakthroughs he made with the book, the other breakthroughs he made were finding Anthony and Daphne. And when Daphne went knock, 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 and Light My Candle started, we knew we were in a new stratosphere of musical theater. Because when I go to the theater, when I love a musical, it pricks my ear in a whole new way. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I've never heard it like that before. For example, when I was in 10th grade and I heard Patti LuPone and Mandy Patinkin, or watched them on the Tony Awards, and they did A New Argentina, and she was screaming, he supports you, for he loves you, understands you, with that scream that was somewhere between a scream and a soprano and a chest voice. I was like, oh my God, I've never heard anything like that before. And when Daphne comes out and sings Light My Candle with the young man who was playing Roger, whose name I don't remember,
This is the '94 workshop. This is the,
I'm sorry, I'm not referring to Adam, who will come into the story later. And it was the right move to get Adam to come into the story later. But in any event, we had never heard anything like that before. And it pricked my ear in a whole new way. And think about it, folks. That is one of the greatest musical theater duets in history. For its musicality, its revelation of character, and its storytelling.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I want to tell this little part of the story to thread through. We're going to sing a song from Rent with that fella Adam Pascal that you mentioned. But in that '94 workshop, towards the end of Act 2, where this song we're going to sing is now, was a song called Real Estate, which was a musical comedy number, kind of like, literally that had like an oompa oompa piano part, where Mark was trying to figure out if he was gonna maybe give up filmmaking to be a real estate mogul.
Join Benny.
Yeah, and join Benny. But it was like this, it was this musical theater number, and it was not great. And one of he made many leaps between '94 and what became the off-Broadway and Broadway production. One of those leaps was taking out Real Estate and replacing it with What You Own.
Which didn't show up till the fall of '95.
Right. And on a personal level, I remember when Jonathan and I also became friends in the year between, and he would call me periodically and sort of update me or share with me things, and he played What You Own for me over the phone, which is something I learned that he would do with friends. He would just call them up sometimes in the middle of the night saying, listen to my song, and he'd play my song. But this is a little different because it was for me and
Your
I was
song.
Yeah, it was really, really thrilling and exciting. But you do share in the book that you had reservations about this song.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that song showed up in a reading that you could not do. And so Gilles did Mark in that reading. It was like in October of 95. And that reading actually took a strange detour. Remember, they opened with Halloween.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And it was like the whole show opens with Seasons of Love and Halloween. It was contorted in many ways, and there was this infamous song that Joanne and Maureen sang about "You are the hepatitis in my clam." I am not kidding.
That was a lyric.
And but in that reading, out comes this great song called "What You Own," and my trepidation was, can we introduce such a big theme, which was a great theme, so late in the show? And you know what you find out sometimes? If it's a great song and it's a great idea, it doesn't matter. And that, of course, leads us to Anthony Rapp and Adam Pascal.
Adam, you want to come out here?
Singing What You Love.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. For purposes, do we need to stand in for front of house? Should we stand here and sing it at stands, or should we walk around? Which is walk around. Let's walk around. Let's walk around. And thank you. We haven't yet. You were introduced officially over the okay. So now you get to hear her play as well on the piano. Yes, thank you.
I prefer the hepatitis clam.
Yeah. Here we go. Don't breathe too deep. Don't think all day. Dive into work. Drive the other way. That drip of hurt. That pint of shame goes away. Just play the game. You're living in America at the end of the millennium. You're living in America. Leave your conscience at the tomb. And when you're living in America at the end of the millennium, you're what you want. The filmmaker cannot see, and the songwriter cannot hear. Yet I see me everywhere. Angels' voices in my ear. Just tighten those shoulders. Just clench your jaw till you frown. Just don't let go, or you may drown. You're living in America at the end of the millennium. You're living in America where it's like the Twilight Zone. And when you're living in America at the end of the millennium, you're what you own. So I own not a notion. I escape and ape content. I don't own emotion. I rent. What was it about that night? Connection in an isolating age. For once the shadows gave way to light. For once I didn't disengage. Angel, I hear you, I hear it, I see it, I hear it, I hear it, my song. Alexi, one song glory. We're dying in America to come into our own. And when you're dying in America at the end of the millennium, you're not alone. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I remember years ago when we were after we were doing the show for almost 2 years when Adam left, and I was like, this might be the last time I get to sing this song with him.
Hardly.
Anyway, so obviously Jonathan died. That happened, of course, and one of the things I've never really spoken to you in a weird way in all these years about some of the personal things that you were going through as his friend, in addition to his producer, and all the decisions that you guys were having to make, because we were so involved in our decisions of like moving forward with just doing the show every night, dealing with this and making changes to the show every day,
Yes.
and processing and just putting one foot in front of the other. So getting to know all these years later some of that journey, that internal journey for you, knowing that you were having to weigh, pragmatic commercial concerns and all these responsibilities, and he was your friend, and you had this show that you had invested all of this time and energy into. I don't know. There's elements that we've never spoken to over the years, so I feel grateful to have her in the window, but anything about that aspect of sharing some of that, or how that informed maybe the other than future things as you then got to work on new shows with writers who were very much alive through the whole process. I don't know if there's anything.
Yeah, I knew, first of all, we can never not consider the profundity of what you own. And when Jonathan writes about dying in America at the end of the millennium, and this question, how did he write his own death? And no one will ever know the answer to that question, but as we all know, because you experienced it from the stage, I experienced the last dress rehearsal from the audience, it was an amazing breakthrough performance for that show. Needed work, but the spirit, energy, and talent, it was there. And as we all know, he was ailing and not feeling great that night, but the notion that we would all wake up and find out in our own different ways that he had died at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning setting the tea kettle on was the farthest thing from anybody's mind. And when I was told that the next morning when I arrived at the office at 10:45 or whenever it was, I just fell against the door frame. But the next thing that came to my mind was David Merrick announcing from the stage of the Winter Garden Theater that Gower Champion, the great director, choreographer of Bye Bye Birdie and Hello Dolly and 42nd Street, had died the day of the opening. And 42nd Street became legendary at that moment because of Gower's death on the day of the opening and because it was such a fantastic show. And there was something about that moment that was so profound for me because my body was shaking with the shock of a friend's death, And I knew at that moment this was a legendary moment and that show was going to become a phenomenon.
I guess I appreciate that, and I know that there have been some cynical things that have been said over the years about Renton, that it wouldn't have been a success if Jonathan hadn't died, and I just always know that Jonathan was very much alive that first rehearsal when the audience went bananas.
Of course,
It's just absurd. It's an absurd notion, but at the same time, yes. What it told us as artists was, as we were telling the story, everything that we were saying about death, everything we were saying about facing mortality was ringing absolutely true. And our own experience of losing our friend was perfectly expressed through what he had written.
It was like an autobiography show.
Yeah.
So it was a show about staying true to your art and not selling. Everything about Jonathan was in that show.
And moving forward with it, I guess there's some people who might have thought, well, should you keep going if he's not here?
Yeah, you know what? That one never rang true to me in any way, shape, or form. I mean, as many of you know from reading Anthony and me and everybody, that we decided the day after to do a read through for an invited audience of family and friends. The smart decision that Jim Nicola made, and we talked about that day, was that it wouldn't be safe for the actors to try to do the show when their bodies are so shaken by this tragedy. And so they all came out and sat at the table and read Act 1. But by the end of Act 1, it was either Wilson or Daphne that just got up and started dancing on that table in La Vie Boheme. And before the end of the act, the entire company finished by dancing on the table. And at the intermission, that was when I met Al and Nan for the first time. I'd heard so much about Al and Nan. They're in Tick, Tick, Boom. When Jonathan talks about them giving up a vacation so he can have shag carpet in his bedroom. I'd heard about them through the process of writing Rent. And obviously Mark's mother is in some way, shape, or form informed by Nan and Al. And at intermission, I mean, it's also, I was only 31 years old too, and you know how sometimes when someone's died, we're a little afraid to talk to their loved one. To the wife, to the husband, to the mother of a child who's died, to a child whose mother has died. And I remember coming over to them and just, I don't remember what I said, but I know what they said. And what Al said is, to Kevin and I, my business partner, you must do this show for Johnny.
And he meant it, and the way that they were thrust into this world is bananas. But then, then the show became the success, obviously, and all the things happened and changed your life, changed all of our lives. And then when you're peering at what's next for you, how do you from your side of things, I can think of it from my side of things, actually a very different headspace, I think. You're a producer. You now have done the thing you thought you wanted to do, which was to produce something. And and not only do you produce something, you produce something that is a phenomenon.
Yes.
Now what? How do you then decide?
How do you top it?
Yeah, is that what you think you have to do?
I remember someone saying to me at one point during the phenomenon that was Rent, and maybe this was the moment that Frank Rich wrote an op-ed on the op-ed page talking about how this is the new voice of a new generation, and he really is talking about how one song, Glory, is the greatest I Want song since Something's Coming from West Side Story. Mm-hmm. And a friend called me that day and said, I hope you're enjoying this because it's never going to happen again. And I'm 31 years old. And I said, you're probably right. But you know what we want to do? We just want to make another good show. And I know that it takes time. And we waited. I'm not in a rush. And we did De La Guarda, which was really a presentation, not a new musical. So that was a great stepping stone to just get something out there that was outrageous and new and fun. And then it took until the spring of 2000 where I was depressed because Kevin and I were the commercial producers of the Andrew Lippa Wild Party. And that was we could write a whole book about the Wild Party wars of the year 2000 between the Michael John LaCusa and and you know what? I want to say something about that. Both great artists who literally went to a Barnes & Noble and saw the newly illustrated book by that great illustrator whose name is escaping me, Art Spiegelman, and wrote their story. But after ours, they both didn't work. And after that didn't work, I was so depressed sometimes I would like fall asleep with my head on my desk. And that was when my friend Robin Goodman said, hey, I just saw this workshop of this puppet show. You gotta go see this. And I was like, what are you talking about? She said, they're calling it Avenue Q. So I show up on a Tuesday night in that little church underneath the Citicorp building, and
Where the York Theater is?
yeah, that's it, exactly. And I take a seat in the back, and out come these two guys, Bobby Lopez and Jeff Marks, and they introduce their new TV variety show. They have a show, they want to sell it to TV, and it's a review of life on Avenue Q in an outer borough of New York City. And then coming on stage are all these amazing actors and puppeteers. And then a song happens that will change my life and yours. And it's actually our next song.
Okay, cool. Yeah, can we please? Oh yeah, sorry. Thank you. Yes. Can you introduce yourself so I don't mispronounce any last names? That's my biggest. It's Barnhart. I want with a T, right? With a heart T. Okay, sorry. Jennifer Barnhart. Yes, and Rick Lyons. And then I'm sorry. I forget. Rob Morrison. Thank you, Rob Morrison. I didn't have my notes in front of me. They're going to come out and we're going to sing a song in full Avenue Q mode, which also, honestly, this is a revelation. I grew up with Sesame Street. I don't know if you did, but this was a revelation. This whole thing.
Take it away, Rod.
Hi. An afternoon alone with my favorite book, Broadway musicals of the 1940s. No roommate to bother me. How could it get any better than this?
Hi, Ron!
Hi, Nikki.
Hey, Ron, you'll never guess what happened to me on the subway this morning. This guy was smiling at me and talking to me.
That's very interesting.
He was being real friendly, and I think he was coming on to me. I think he might have thought I was gay.
So, why are you telling me this? Why should I care? I don't care. What do you have for lunch today?
Oh, gee, Ron, you don't have to get all defensive.
I'm not getting defensive. What do I care about some gay guy you met? Okay, I'm trying to read.
Oh, I didn't mean anything by it, Ron. No, I just think it's something we should be able to talk about.
Well, I do not want to talk about it, Nikki. This conversation is over.
Well, yeah, but Ron. Oh, okay, but just so you know, if you were gay, that'd be okay. I mean, 'cause hey, I like you anyway. Because you see, if it were me, I would feel free to say that I was gay, but I'm not gay.
Nikki, please, I'm trying to read. What?
If you were queer,
Nikki,
I'd still be here.
I'm trying to read this book.
Year after year,
Nikki!
because you're dear to me. I know that you
What?
would accept me too.
I would?
If I told you today, hey, guess what? I'm gay, but I'm not gay. I'm happy just being with you.
High button shoes, pal Joey.
What should it matter to me what you do in bed with guys?
Nikki, that is gross.
No, it's not. If you were gay,
Oh my God.
I'd shout, hooray!
I'm not listening.
And here I'd stay.
La, 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 la.
I wouldn't get in your way. You count on me to always be beside you every day to tell you it's okay. You were just born that way. And as they say, it's in
last number.
I fell off my chair laughing. Because folks, remember, this is 2000. And you know how I talked about how I want, when I experience a new musical, I want my ear to be pricked in a whole new way. I want to be orally, I want to hear something I've never heard before. And although we'd all heard music that sounded kind of like that from Sesame Street, the marriage of those words and those ideas to that music was revolutionary.
And did you think, oh God, puppets? Can this? Where in terms of the figuring out the
all
viability?
I knew was that, and then then the one that comes after that is everyone's a little bit racist, and it just goes on and on. Now, by the way, it was still a review. They actually had Kate Monster singing "Not a Day Goes By" from Maryland, right, about how I love him. And they even did a Marcy and Zena song, Taylor the Latte Boy. So they had something big in mind. And I met Jeff and Bobby after, because Jeff had also gone to Michigan, and I had gone to Michigan. And Michigan. And then I had said to them, well, good luck with your TV show. I don't do TV, but if you ever want to consider making a musical, give me a call. They called on Monday. And then they came into the office with Rick Lyon and Trekkie Monster, and Jeff and Bobby. And my partner Kevin didn't even go to that workshop. But once Trekkie Monster came into the office and started talking to Kevin, Kevin's like, we're doing that show. and then once again, so here's what we knew. They had some great characters. Right? We already had Nikki, we already had Rod, we already had Trekkie. We already had Kate, and they had some great songs, but they didn't have a book. And that's where the hard work comes in. And that revelation there was when we found a young playwright who had been an actor named Jeff Whitty, who was a witty guy. And when he joined Jeff and Bobby, he pulled the incredible book out of Avenue Q. And you know what I say about Avenue Q? It's a perfect musical.
I agree. Yes. And so then you did Red and Wild Party, which didn't succeed.
Correct.
And then Avenue Q, which did succeed in a big way. And then where you go next? How do you then make your next? So now you're building a career, building a life.
Yeah. Now we have the pleasure of having like 2 shows on Broadway simultaneously. And in the interim, we had also done that Baz Luhrmann La Boheme on Broadway, which was fun because I had this fantasy because we had 2 La Bohemes on Broadway at the same time. And for those 6 months of doing the Baz Luhrmann La Boheme, we did have 2 La Bohemes on Broadway at the same time.
And it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous.
Oh, that was the most beautiful show I
spectacular.
ever did. No, hands down, absolutely gorgeous. Once again, I want to say, my journey is not a musical or a play every year on Broadway. It's sparse, and it's because I wait. I either feel it or I don't. And if I don't feel it, you have to want to adopt these musicals as if they are your child. And there's a big difference between a musical you like, right? I see a lot of musicals I like, and a musical that I want to hopefully live with for many, many years to come. And so you wait. And then the next one that, of course, enters my life and changes my life for the next many, many years is In the Heights.
And did you know of Lin-Manuel at this point? Like how did that?
Well, that's a fun one because our fantastic sound designer, Nevin Steinberg, runs into Kevin on the subway and says, I'm helping these young guys work on this show that's doing some workshops in the basement of the drama bookshop. Because young director Tommy Kail out of Wesleyan has persuaded the owner of the drama bookshop to let him start doing plays in their 50-seat black box theater down there, and he's doing like Pfeiffer's People and different shows. And he gets together with another Wesleyan graduate, Lin-Manuel Miranda, who had done a one-act version of In the Heights as a sophomore at Wesleyan College. And actually Lin directed that production. He wasn't in it yet. And so Tommy gives him this task: why don't you write a new song every month, and then we'll do a reading. And Kevin goes to the first reading.
Not you, just Kevin.
No, I was going to see Xanadont that night. Good show. Good show. And I was sick. And Kevin calls me, he says, Jeffrey, there's something going on. I can feel something going on here. You need to come over here. And I'm like, I gotta go see Xanadont. And so I go see Xanadont. He sees In the Heights, and he is so wrapped by it, wrapped by the rap, that he says, we're gonna do this show. And then and when I first experienced it, we've now added Kera Hodes to be the book writer, because once again, Lin needed help to pull that plot, to pull those characters out of those amazing songs. And the revelation for me is that when I see this reading, Lin comes out now playing Usnavi, and he starts this warm, enveloping rap that just hugs you, lights up on Washington Heights at the break of day. And then, miraculously behind him, come this Broadway chorus singing In the Heights, I wake up and start my day. And who has ever imagined that they could marry rap music to Broadway choral music in such a beautiful way? And my ear has been pricked in a whole new way. And that's when I was in, but of course I was also in when Mandy Gonzalez came out and started doing Nina at that very same rate.
Mandy, would you like to enter the scene? Were you,
My friend.
may I take a moment with you and just ask, like, at what point in the lengthy process of In the Heights development were you a part of it, and did you already know Lin, and like, and?
Well, I was just asking Chris Jackson, who's back here. I said, when was that? So I think I came in a little.
Manhattan Theater Club.
Yes, I think I came in. Yeah, Manhattan Theater Club, and yeah, Lincoln. I'm sorry, Nina
said
had a
Lincoln.
brother, Lincoln, at that time, and Nina wasn't really who she kind of became yet.
Yeah.
You know, but I remember Chris and I had some incredible songs, and I was just, you know, it was that first day of the reading. You know, when you do a reading, usually you're around and you sit around and you read out of books and things like that. And then after that, you start to learn the music. And I remember Lin-Manuel was like, I know none of you know any of the songs, so I'm just gonna sing everything. And he was like, it was like he looked at Alex Lackmore and it was like, hit it. And he was like, lights up on Washington Heights up at the break of day. And I was like, who is this guy? And how can I be a part of this forever? And I remember I was sitting next to Andrea Burns and we just were like mesmerized. So I didn't know where it was gonna go. I just knew I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, I think we went into workshop that that Nina really started to get fleshed out. And I just have to say one thing. So I have this vivid memory of being in the elevator at 42nd Street Studios, and somebody asked me, and Jeffrey was also in the elevator with me, and somebody said, aren't you upset that you're not in the first number? You know, like In the Heights, it's such a classic song, and like this and that, like it's so exciting. And I was just like, well, I didn't know what to say. And I remember Jeffrey said, yeah, but she has the second song. And I remember feeling so protected and just so in that moment, it was like, yeah, I do have that second song, and what a song it is and became. But I'll never forget that moment that we had and how you've really been that for me ever since.
I love you.
I love you too.
Are you ready to sing a little for us?
Sure. You guys can sing along too. sweet, they say you're going places. So how can I say that while I was away, I had so much to hide? Hey guys, it's me, the biggest disappointment, you know. The kid couldn't hack it, she's back and she's walking real slow. Welcome home, just breathe. Just breathe. As the radio plays old forgotten boleros, I think of the days when this city was mine. I remember the praise I del oro te quiero. The neighborhood waved and said, Nina, be brave and you're gonna be fine. And maybe it's me, but it all seems like a lifetime ago. So what do I say to these faces that I used to know? Hey, I'm home. Hey, they're not worried about me. They are all counting on me to succeed. I am the one who made it out, the one who always made the grade. But maybe I should have just stayed home. When I was a child, I stayed wide awake, climbed to the highest place on every fire escape, restless to climb. I got every scholarship, saved every dollar, the first to go to college. Should I tell them why I'm coming back home with my eyes on the horizon? Just me and the GWB, asking G, Nina, what'll you be? Straighten the spine, smile for the neighbors, everything's fine, everything's cool. The standard reply, lots of tests, lots of papers, smile, wave goodbye, and pray to the sky. Oh God, what will my parents say? Can I go in there and say, I know that I'm letting you down? Nina, just breathe.
Um, I'm looking at, there's a clock. I know that the next song is long, so I think we might have to just like quickly segue into it. You know, I can do like a quick thing.
You know what?
We can you know.
That song just it is so stimulating to me, and I think I could segue us.
Please.
You know what that song reminds me of? Anthony, when you said that there were some cynics back in 1996 who said Rent was only successful because of the tragedy of Jonathan's death, here's what they don't get, or here's what we proved. Jonathan was the future of the American musical. And you know why we know that? Because there's no Avenue Q on Broadway if there's no Rent. There's no Spring Awakening on Broadway if there's no Rent. And we know that high school senior from Hunter High School, Lin-Manuel, brings his girlfriend. He can afford the $35 tickets, so he gets 2 tickets in the balcony to see Rent. And you know what he says to himself after he sees Rent? Oh, I can write a musical about my neighborhood, about my family, about my friends. And Rent leads in some way, shape, or form to In the Heights. 100%. And what I give Jonathan the greatest credit for is that all of us are standing on his shoulders 30 years after the premiere of Rent.
Mr. Chris Jackson, would you please?
Chris Jackson!
Bring us home,
Please.
please. And thank you so much. We're gonna have to probably wrap up and just say goodbye. So thank you, Jeffrey, for your generosity.
Anthony, what a
and spirit.
beautiful,
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Adam. Thank you to Rick and Jennifer. Oh my God, thank you to Andrea. Thank you.
I used to think we lived at the top of the world when the world was just a subway map, and the 1/9 climbed a dotted line to my place.
There's no 9 train now.
Right. I used to think the Bronx was a place in the sky when the world was just a subway map, and my thoughts took shape on that fire escape. Can you remind me of what it was like at the top of the world?
Come with me. In July, with a stop at my corner fire hydrant.
You would open it every summer.
I would bust it with the wrench till my face got drenched, till I heard the sirens, and then I ran like hell. Yeah, I ran like hell. Father's dispatch window, he let me in, though they come in to get me.
You were always in constant trouble.
And then your dad would act all snide, but he let me hide. You'd be there inside.
Life was easier then.
Nina, everything is easier when you're home. The streets a little kinder when you're home. Can you see that the day seems clearer now that you are here? Or is it me? Maybe it's just me. We gotta go, I wanna show you all I know. The sun is setting and the light is getting
Are we
low.
going to Castle Garden?
Maybe not, but way to take a shot when the day is hot. I got a little shady spot a little ways away that ought to cool us down. Welcome back to town.
Now back in high school when it darkened, you'd hang out in Better Market.
Now he would bring his radio.
As I walked home from senior studies, you rapping with your buddies.
The volume high, get left on by. Whoa.
Everybody. Now that you're here with me.
And that song you are hearing is the neighborhood just cheering you along.
Don't say that.
What's wrong?
Don't say that. When I was younger, I'd imagine what would happen if my parents had stayed in Puerto Rico. Who would I be if I had never seen Manhattan? If I lived in Puerto Rico with my people, my people. feel like all my life I'm trying to find the answer, working harder, learning Spanish, learning all I can. I thought I might find the answer out at Stanford, but I'd stare out at the sea, thinking, where am I supposed to be? So please don't say you're proud of me when I've lost my way.
Then can I say I couldn't get my mind off you all day? Now listen to me, that may be how you perceive it. But Nina, please believe that when you find your way again, you are gonna change the world, and then we're all gonna brag and say we knew her way. Yeah, this was your home.
Thank you, folks. I think I'm signing books. I don't know where. I think over there somewhere. So if you want a book,
Your signing will be
there we go.
in the VIP room, outhouse left. Outhouse left. And that'll be at about 3 p.m. 3 p.m. for the book signing.
Okay, thanks, folks. Great to see you. Yeah.